The night was cold, and the streets were wet with rain. Daniel Cross walked home from his late shift, his boots splashing in the puddles. The neon lights of the city flickered above him, casting long shadows that made the alleys look alive. It was a night when most people hurried to their warm homes. But Daniel's life was not so warm anymore. He lived alone in a small house on the edge of the district. As he turned into a narrow street, he noticed something unusual. A figure crouched near the trash bins, hidden under a dirty cloak. At first, he thought it was just another homeless human, but then he saw the glow. Two faint lights, like silver moons, shining from beneath the hood. Eyes, not human eyes, but alien eyes. Daniel froze, his breath caught in his throat. Aliens were rare in this city, and most people avoided them. Some were dangerous, others were just lost, but all of them carried stories of war and suffering. This one looked weak, trembling in the cold, her hands clutching an old piece of cloth like it was her last treasure. For a moment, Daniel wanted to turn away. He had nothing to do with alien troubles. He already had his own problems. But something in those glowing eyes made him pause. They were not threatening. They were pleading, begging silently for help. He took a careful step forward, his voice low. "Do you need food?" he asked. The figure hesitated, then nodded slowly, the hood slipping back just enough to reveal pale skin marked with strange patterns. Her face was thin, her lips trembling, her voice barely a whisper when she spoke. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I will work. I just need shelter." Daniel's chest tightened. She was not asking for money, not even asking for pity. She was offering to work, even in her condition. He looked at her hands, long and slender, dirt covering her skin, but her grip was strong. Something inside him shifted. Maybe it was loneliness, maybe it was guilt, but he couldn't walk away. "Come with me," he said finally. "I don't have much, but you can clean the house, and I'll give you food." Her eyes widened, shining brighter in the darkness, and she followed him without a word. The walk back felt strange. Daniel kept glancing at her, wondering if he had just made a mistake. Bringing an alien stranger into his home was dangerous. But he also felt a strange pull, like her presence was meant to cross his path tonight. When they reached his small house, Daniel opened the door and gestured inside. Lyra stepped in, her eyes scanning everything as if she had never seen a human home before. The wooden floor creaked under her bare feet, and she touched the edge of a chair gently, almost with reverence. It was as if she was studying every object, every detail, not just cleaning with her eyes, but memorizing. Daniel gave her a blanket and pointed to the kitchen. "There's water, there's bread. Eat first," he said. She sat silently, eating slowly, carefully, like every bite was precious. Daniel leaned on the doorway, watching her. She was strange, yes, but not dangerous, at least not yet. After she finished, she stood and began moving around the house. She picked up dust, wiped the tables, arranged the books. Her movements were fast, precise, almost too perfect. Daniel frowned. Something about the way she worked felt different. She was not just cleaning, she was scanning, searching, as if looking for hidden signs. Hours passed, and the house looked cleaner than it had in months. Daniel almost forgot she had been a stranger on the street only moments ago. But his unease returned when he saw her standing in the living room. She was staring at a framed photo of his family, his parents long gone. When he stepped closer, she turned away quickly, muttering, "Beautiful. Humans keep memories." Daniel didn't ask what she meant. Instead, he showed her the small guest room. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. She nodded, stepping inside, clutching the blanket tightly. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and Daniel shivered as he closed the door. Later that night, the house felt different. The air seemed heavier, the silence louder. Daniel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her. Why was she on the streets? Why did she look at his house like it was something sacred? And why did he feel both fear and pity at the same time? He closed his eyes, but then came a sound, a soft creak from the hallway, like someone moving slowly. His heart raced. He sat up and listened. Another sound, closer now, footsteps light and careful. He reached for the lamp, but before he could turn it on, the sound stopped. Daniel waited, his breath shallow. Then silence returned, deep and heavy. He told himself it was nothing, maybe just the old house shifting, but in his heart he knew the stranger in his home was not here just to clean. The morning came slowly, pale light slipping through the blinds of Daniel's small house. He woke with a heavy head, the memory of last night still sharp in his mind. For a moment he thought he had dreamed it, the glowing eyes, the cloaked figure in the rain. But when he stepped into the hallway, the smell of warm bread reached his nose, and he knew it was real. In the kitchen, Lyra stood silently, her back to him. She had cleaned the counters, arranged the dishes, and even fixed the broken chair with some kind of strange thread that shimmered like silver. When she turned, her eyes glowed softly in the morning light, and for a moment Daniel forgot to breathe. She looked less like a homeless alien and more like someone who belonged to another world entirely. "You fixed the chair," Daniel said carefully. Lyra nodded, her voice soft. "Your things should not break. I can repair, I can clean, I can stay useful." Her words were steady, but her tone carried something deeper, as if she was not just talking about furniture, but about herself. Daniel watched her for a long moment, wondering what secrets she carried, but he stayed silent. Throughout the day, she worked with a strange focus. She dusted corners he had not touched in years, wiped windows until they shone, and even polished the old books on his shelf. Her hands moved with precision, like every motion had been practiced 1,000 times before. Daniel felt both impressed and uneasy. It was not normal, it was not just cleaning, it was almost like a ritual. When she thought he wasn't watching, Daniel saw her trace symbols with her finger on the wood. Tiny patterns, faint and glowing for a second before fading. He asked once, "What are you doing?" She froze, her face pale, then shook her head quickly. "Nothing, just habit." But Daniel knew it was not nothing. In the evening, after the house looked spotless, she asked him a question that made his chest tighten. "Why did you help me?" she whispered, not meeting his eyes. Daniel hesitated, unsure of the answer himself. He could have ignored her, could have left her in the rain, but something in her eyes had pulled him in. "Because you looked like you needed it," he said simply. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips, fragile but real. Yet the peace did not last. That night, while Daniel tried to read in the living room, he heard the sound again. Light footsteps in the hallway, slow, measured like someone testing each creak of the floorboards. He set his book down, his pulse rising. When he looked up, Lyra was standing there, her cloak gone, her thin figure lit by the dim lamp. "Why are you not in your room?" Daniel asked, his voice sharper than he intended. She lowered her head, her voice trembling. "I cannot sleep. They always find me in dreams." Daniel frowned. "Who?" She didn't answer, only wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Then she moved closer to the family photo on the shelf, her glowing eyes fixed on it again. "You care about them," she said. "Humans keep memories in frames. It is beautiful." Daniel swallowed hard. The photo was old, the only thing left of his family. He wondered how much she knew and why she stared at it like it was something sacred. Lyra turned back to him, her expression unreadable. "You are kind, Daniel Cross," she whispered. "But kindness is dangerous. It attracts hunters." Her words struck him like a blade. He opened his mouth to ask more, but then there was a noise outside. A soft hum, mechanical, unnatural, growing louder. Lyra's eyes widened, her entire body tensing. "They are close," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They have found me." Daniel rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peek out. Down the street, dark shapes moved, shadows too heavy to be ordinary people. Vehicles hovered in silence. Lights dimmed, scanning the houses. A chill ran down his spine, his heart hammering in his chest. "Who are they?" he demanded, turning to Lyra. She looked at him with fear, but also with something else, trust, fragile and desperate. "They are hunters," she said, her voice almost a breath. "If they see me here, you will die too." Daniel felt the weight of her words sink into him. He had taken in a stranger, a homeless alien, and now danger had followed him home. But when he looked into her glowing eyes, trembling yet filled with a strange strength, he couldn't turn away. Whatever she was hiding, whatever past she carried, it had just arrived at his doorstep. The silence outside grew heavier, the hum sharper. Daniel closed the curtain, his jaw set. His life had been simple, lonely, almost empty, but not anymore. Now his house was no longer just his. It had become a shelter, a secret, and maybe even a battlefield. And deep down, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. Daniel barely slept that night, the sound of the hovering engines outside echoing in his ears. He stayed by the window, staring at the dim glow of the street until the machines faded into the distance. When silence finally returned, he turned to check on Lyra, but her door was half open and the bed inside was empty. His chest tightened, fear cutting through him. Had she run away, or had the hunters already taken her? He moved quietly through the house, every step heavy with dread. The creak of a floorboard made him pause, and then he saw her. She was standing in the kitchen, her cloak draped loosely over her shoulders, staring at the old family photo pinned to the wall. Her glowing eyes reflected the dim lamplight, and her thin hands touched the edge of the frame as if it were sacred. "What are you doing?" Daniel asked softly, his voice rough with sleep. Lyra turned, startled, her lips parting like she had been caught stealing. But instead of guilt, there was sorrow in her face. "I lost my family too," she whispered, her words trembling like broken glass. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He didn't know what war she had escaped, but in that moment he believed her. She sat at the table, her hands folding into her lap. "I had a mate. I had a child," she said quietly. "They burned when the ships came. I ran. I hid. I became nothing." Her words cut through the silence like blades. Daniel sat opposite her, not knowing what to say. He wanted to ask more, but her eyes glowed brighter, and she shook her head. "Do not ask. Some things will only bring death." For a long moment, neither spoke. The night stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Daniel saw a side of her that was not just alien, but painfully human. Loss, grief, survival, it was written all over her face. And yet, behind the sorrow, he saw something else too. Strength, the kind that comes only when everything has already been taken. "Why me?" he asked suddenly. "Why did you follow me? Why my house?" Her gaze met his sharp and piercing. "Because you stopped," she said. "No one else did." The words struck him harder than he expected. He had offered food and shelter, but she saw more than that. She saw choice. Daniel rubbed his face, the weight of it pressing down on him. She was not just a stranger anymore, not just a mouth to feed. She was a storm dragging him into something he didn't understand. But deep inside, he couldn't push her away. Not now. Not after hearing her voice shake with pain. The next morning, the air felt heavy with danger. Daniel went outside to fetch water, and he noticed it, a mark on the ground near his gate. A strange pattern burned into the dirt, circular, sharp, glowing faintly before fading. His blood ran cold. It was not natural. It was a signal, a warning. The hunters had been here, and they were watching. When he returned inside, Lyra was standing by the window. Her eyes tracked the horizon like she could see farther than any human. "They know," she whispered. "They will return." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Then why are you still here? Why risk my life?" She turned to him, her face calm, but her eyes burning. "Because I have nowhere else to go, and because you gave me a reason to live one more night." Her words sank into him, deeper than he wanted to admit. He thought of the loneliness that had haunted his house for years. Now it felt alive, dangerous, unpredictable, but not empty anymore. He hated himself for it, but part of him wanted her to stay, even if it meant risk. That night, he locked the doors and windows, his nerves on edge. He checked the locks twice, then lay in bed, trying to steady his breathing. But when he opened his eyes again, his heart froze. Lyra was there, sitting at the edge of his bed, her glowing eyes watching him in the dark. He sat up quickly, fear spiking through him. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded. She didn't flinch, her voice low. "I cannot sleep out there. They watch. I feel them in the walls." Daniel swallowed hard, torn between anger and pity. Her presence was unsettling, but her fear was real. She wrapped the blanket around herself like a shield, her voice trembling. "If they find me here, you will die too." The room went silent, the weight of her words crushing the air. Daniel stared at her, and in that moment he understood. Whatever had followed her here was not going to stop. His life was no longer his own. It was tied to hers now. And the hunters would not rest until they claimed what they wanted. The silence in the room stretched like a blade between them. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, his fists tight against the blanket. Lyra's glowing eyes shimmered in the dark, not threatening, but unblinking. She looked fragile, yet unmovable, like someone who had already lost too much to fear. "You can't stay in my room," Daniel said firmly, though his voice shook more than he wanted. Lyra tilted her head slightly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders, revealing the strange markings on her skin. "They hunt through the walls, through the shadows," she whispered, "but here, close to you, I feel hidden." Her words made no sense, yet they carried weight, as if his presence itself was a shield she trusted. Daniel rubbed his face, torn between anger and pity. He wanted to tell her to leave, to remind her that she was just a stranger. But something inside him twisted, because she wasn't just a stranger anymore. Her voice carried loneliness, so deep it felt like an echo of his own. And in her eyes, he saw desperation mixed with something even stronger. Hope, fragile but alive. "Who are they?" Daniel asked at last, his tone low. "The hunters," she said, her gaze fixed on the floor. "They do not forgive. They do not forget. They burn everything to find what they lost." Daniel frowned. "And what did they lose?" Lyra's lips pressed together, her silence sharper than any answer. Then she whispered, "If I tell you, your death will come faster." The words made his chest tighten, frustration boiling inside him. "You came into my house, into my life, and now you bring this danger," he snapped. Her eyes softened, almost breaking. "I did not choose you, Daniel Cross. I only chose to survive." The air thickened with her sorrow, and he turned away, unable to hold her gaze. Hours crawled by, the night heavy and endless. Daniel dozed off in exhaustion, but when he woke again, the chair by his bed was empty. For a moment, he thought she had gone back to her room, but then he heard it, the sound of soft humming from the basement. He followed the noise, each step colder than the last. When he reached the bottom, he froze. Lyra was kneeling on the ground, her hands glowing faintly, drawing symbols in the dirt. The marks shimmered for a heartbeat, then faded like mist. Her lips moved with words too alien for him to understand, a song both haunting and beautiful. Daniel's voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing?" She flinched, her glow vanishing, her body curling as if caught in a crime. "It is protection," she whispered quickly, "so they cannot break through so fast." Daniel's skin prickled, his instincts screamed at him to run. But he stayed rooted, his heart hammering in his chest. "You're telling me they can come here, inside my house?" he demanded. Lyra lifted her head, her voice trembling. "They already are here, watching, waiting for me to be weak." The weight of her words sank into him. This was no longer just about shelter or kindness. This was survival. His house was not a home anymore. It had become a target. And Lyra was not just a guest. She was the reason predators circled in the dark. Before Daniel could speak again, a knock shattered the silence. Loud, heavy, unnatural, echoing through the walls like thunder. His breath stopped, his blood ran cold. The hunters had come to his door. Lyra's glowing eyes snapped to his, wide with fear but steady. "Do not open," she hissed, her voice urgent. "If you let them see me, we are both dead." Daniel stood frozen, his heart pounding in his ears. The knock came again, harder this time, followed by a voice, deep and metallic. "Human, open your door. We are searching for one of ours." Daniel clenched his jaw, his fists trembling. His life had been simple before last night, but now every choice felt like stepping into fire. Lyra moved closer, her hand brushing his arm, her touch cold but desperate. "Please," she whispered, "you must decide now, them or me." The knocking grew louder, shaking the frame of the house. Daniel's mind raced, fear clawing at his chest. He could betray her and live, or protect her and risk everything. The hunters waited outside, shadows pressing against the walls. Inside, Lyra's glowing eyes locked on his, pleading without words. Daniel's breath came heavy, his choice burning inside him. He had no more time. The moment of decision had come. The pounding on the door shook the small house, each knock harder than the last. Daniel stood frozen, his breath shallow, his heart hammering so loudly he thought the hunters outside could hear it. Lyra clutched the blanket around her shoulders, her glowing eyes locked on him, filled with silent fear and desperate trust. "Do not open," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry weight. "If you do, they will kill us both." The voice outside came again, sharp and cold. "Human, we know she is here. Hand her over and your life will be spared." Daniel's skin crawled. The words sank like poison into the room. He had never been a brave man, never been the kind to fight, but something inside him stirred. The thought of giving her up made his chest ache, as if he were betraying something more than just a stranger. The door shook once more, then silence fell. Daniel dared a glance at the window, but saw only shadows shifting, heavy and unnatural. He turned to Lyra, his voice low but urgent. "Where do I hide you?" She stepped closer, her hand cold against his wrist. "The basement. They will sense me, but if I hold my breath, they may pass." Daniel guided her quickly down the narrow stairs, his nerves burning with every sound of the hunters moving outside. The basement was dark, cluttered with boxes and broken tools. She crouched low, curling into the shadows, her body trembling though her eyes stayed sharp. As he moved to close the door, her voice reached him, soft and haunting. "If you betray me, I will not blame you, but if you protect me, your life will change forever." The words stayed in his chest as he climbed back up. The knock came again. This time the wood cracked under the force. Daniel gritted his teeth and pulled the door open before it broke completely. Outside stood 3 figures, tall and armored, their faces hidden behind black masks that glowed faintly with red lines. Their weapons pulsed with energy, humming softly like predators ready to strike. "Human," the leader said, his voice metallic. "We search for one of ours. She is dangerous. She is a thief. Hand her to us, and we will leave you in peace." Daniel's throat went dry, but he forced his voice steady. "No one is here but me," he said, his lie tasting like ash on his tongue. The hunter stepped closer, towering over him, the glow of his mask reflecting in Daniel's eyes. "You lie," the metallic voice said. "We can smell her." Daniel's chest tightened, panic rising, but he held his ground. "You're mistaken. I don't know who you're talking about," he said. The hunter's weapon rose, aimed at his chest, the hum growing louder. For a heartbeat, Daniel thought it was the end, that his kindness had doomed him. But then the leader lowered the weapon, tilting his head slightly. "Strange," the hunter said. "Your kind usually breaks so quickly." The words carried suspicion, but also curiosity. Daniel stood silent, every muscle locked, praying they would leave. At last, the leader turned away, motioning to the others. "We search the next house," he ordered, and the shadows began to fade. Daniel shut the door as fast as he dared, his hands shaking violently. He leaned against the wood, his breath ragged, sweat dripping down his neck. For a long moment, he stood there in silence, the echo of their presence still vibrating through the walls. Then he rushed to the basement, pulling the door open. Lyra was still there, crouched in the corner, her body stiff like stone. When she saw him, her eyes widened, her lips parting as if she had expected never to see him again. "You didn't give me away," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. Daniel swallowed hard, his voice rough. "I don't know why, but I couldn't." She rose slowly, her figure trembling, but her gaze glowing with new light. "They will come again," she said. "Hunters never stop. They do not forget, but you chose me tonight, and that means you are part of this now." Her words struck him like iron, the truth sinking in. He had crossed a line, and there was no way back. The house felt smaller, heavier, as if danger itself had settled in the walls. Daniel looked at her, this strange, broken alien who had fallen into his life. She was not just a burden anymore, not just a stranger needing food. She was a secret that the hunters wanted, and somehow he had chosen to protect her. His life would never be the same, and deep down, he already knew he would not regret it. The night stretched heavy after the hunters left. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, his hands still trembling, his mind racing with everything that had just happened. The image of their glowing masks burned in his memory, the way they stood like shadows with voices made of steel. He had lied to them, and somehow they had believed, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. Across from him, Lyra sat quietly, her cloak wrapped tight around her thin frame. Her eyes glowed softly in the dim light, watching him, measuring him. At last she spoke, her voice low, almost like a confession. "You risked your life for me, and now you deserve the truth." Daniel looked up, his jaw tight. "Then tell me why they want you." For a long moment, she said nothing, her fingers tracing the wooden table as if searching for the right words. Then she whispered, "I'm not just a wanderer, not just a refugee. I was part of the House of Saren, a bloodline that once ruled a world far from here." Daniel blinked, struggling to process her words. "You're saying you're some kind of royalty?" he asked. Lyra nodded faintly, her eyes clouded with pain. "I was meant to lead, but the hunters came, they burned my home, they slaughtered my kin. I fled, carrying only memory and shame." Her voice cracked as she spoke, but her gaze stayed steady. Daniel leaned back, his chest heavy. "So they're chasing you because you're important." Lyra shook her head, her tone bitter. "Not important, dangerous. I'm the last of my line, and as long as I breathe, the hunters cannot claim complete victory. They hunt me to erase the final trace of what they destroyed." The room grew colder with her words. Daniel rubbed his temples, trying to push away the weight pressing down on him. He had thought she was just a homeless alien, lost and broken. But now he realized she carried something far greater, an entire history balanced on her survival. "And now they know you are here," he muttered. Lyra's lips trembled, her voice soft. "Yes, and because you chose to protect me, you are bound to my fate." Her words struck him hard, but strangely, they didn't make him want to send her away. Instead, a fire stirred in his chest, something he had not felt in years. "I don't care if they're hunters or soldiers or gods," Daniel said, his voice firming. "You came to me starving, broken, and I helped you because it was the right thing. I won't hand you over now, not when I know what they'll do to you." Lyra's eyes widened, glowing brighter, her lips parting as if she couldn't believe his words. "You would stand against them," she whispered, disbelief shaking her voice. Daniel met her gaze, his jaw set. "I've lost everything already. Maybe protecting you gives me a reason to fight again." For the first time, her face softened with something more than sorrow. It was gratitude, fragile but powerful. "You are different from others of your kind," she said softly. "They look at me with fear, but you look at me with defiance, and that will make them fear you." Her words lingered in the air, and Daniel felt the weight of them settle in his bones. He was only a man, an ordinary human with no weapons, no army, no power. But something about that made his courage real, made it matter. The hunters had technology, strength, and numbers, but he had made a choice they did not expect. He had chosen compassion, and that made him unpredictable. That night, as he prepared a place for her to sleep again, he noticed her watching him, not with fear this time, but with something else, a quiet respect, maybe even trust. Before she lay down, she whispered, "If you help me live, your name will be remembered among the stars." Daniel stood in the doorway long after she closed her eyes. The words echoed in his mind, strange and heavy. He had never wanted fame, never wanted stories told about him. But now he realized he was already part of one. Outside, the wind carried faint mechanical hums, a reminder that danger was still near. But inside, Daniel felt something stronger than fear. For the first time in years, his life had meaning again, and he would not let the hunters take that away. The next night came heavy with silence. Daniel felt it pressing against the walls of his small house, a silence too sharp, too purposeful. He knew the hunters would return, and this time they would not leave without searching every shadow. Lyra sensed it too, her glowing eyes never leaving the window, her body tense like a bowstring. "They will not stop," she whispered. "This time they will break through, and you will die if you stay near me." Daniel shook his head, his jaw tight. "I've already made my choice, Lyra. I'm not leaving you." Her lips trembled, but she did not argue. Instead, she touched the markings on her skin, faintly glowing lines that pulsed with hidden power. "If they come, I will fight, but I cannot win alone," she said. "I need your courage." Daniel laughed softly, bitter but real. "I don't have weapons. I don't have strength. What can I give against them?" Lyra turned to him, her voice steady. "You have something no hunter has, humanity, and that makes you stronger than you believe." Her words sank into him, and for the first time he felt the fire in his chest burn brighter than the fear. The sound came then, a deep hum rolling through the night, shaking the windows. Daniel rushed to the door, peeking through the crack. Dark shapes moved outside, their armored figures glowing faint red, their weapons drawn. The hunters had returned, and this time there were more of them. The door shuddered as they struck it, each hit sending splinters flying. Daniel grabbed the only thing he had, an old iron rod from the basement, his knuckles white as he gripped it. Lyra stood beside him, her hands glowing faintly, her eyes burning with a strange light. "When the door breaks, stand with me," she whispered, "not because you can win, but because they must know humans do not bow." The door shattered, and the hunters poured inside, shadows with burning masks. Their weapons hummed with deadly light, casting long streaks across the walls. The leader stepped forward, his voice metallic and cold. "Hand her over, human, and you may still live." Daniel raised the iron rod, his voice loud and firm. "You'll have to take her from me." The hunters froze, surprised by his defiance. For a heartbeat, the silence was heavier than the storm outside. Then Lyra stepped forward, her body glowing brighter, her voice sharp like thunder. "You burned my world, you hunted my kin, but here stands one who will not bend to you." The hunters aimed their weapons, but Daniel stood firm beside her, his heart racing. He had nothing but courage, yet in that moment it was enough. The leader hesitated, his mask tilting, as if the sight of a human defending an alien confused him. And in that hesitation, Lyra raised her hands, releasing a burst of light that shook the air. The room blazed with energy, the hunters stumbling back, their masks flickering. Daniel swung his iron rod with all his strength, striking one of them across the chest. To his shock, the alien stumbled. Not invincible after all. The others pulled back, regrouping at the doorway, their voices sharp with anger. "This is not over," the leader hissed, his voice crackling like broken glass. "We will return, and when we do, both of you will fall." They vanished into the night, their shadows swallowed by the hum of their machines. Silence returned, heavy but broken now. Daniel dropped the iron rod, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. He turned to Lyra, who was trembling but alive, her glow fading slowly. "You fought them," he said, his voice raw. "You could have done that from the start." She shook her head, her voice weak. "I had no strength until you stood with me. Your courage lit mine." Daniel stared at her, his heart pounding. He realized then that what made humans special was not strength or weapons. It was the choice to stand when everything said to run. It was the ability to protect even a stranger, even at the edge of fear. Lyra's eyes softened, glowing faintly. "I was homeless," she whispered, her voice breaking, "until I found a home in you." Daniel felt the words strike deeper than any weapon. For the first time in years, he did not feel alone. He felt part of something greater, a bond that reached beyond worlds. The night grew quiet again, the danger not gone, but pushed back. Daniel knew the hunters would return, but he also knew he would be ready, not because he had power, but because he had found a reason to fight. And in that reason, he was no longer just a man with an empty house. He was a protector, a partner, and maybe even a legend yet to be written.